It's on my wall.
Eddie, where do you want me? There we go. Now I'm on. Oh, now I'm on. I'm not quite used to having sound systems all over this building, but welcome again to All Saints. My name is Father Larry Byrne. I'm the rector here, and we are celebrating our 130th anniversary as a parish. We began in 1892. In 1892, if you wanted to go to church, you had to schlep all the way out to St. George's in Flushing on Main Street. And you know how difficult it is to get there today. It was just as difficult to get there in 1892, just for different reasons. But there weren't really much in the way of roads. We were on Montauk Avenue. We were the only thing on this block. And we've come a long way since then. So in celebrating our 130th anniversary, we decided, what can we do that's a little different? And so we decided we would amp up our outreach. And part of the way we are doing that is through a brand new All Saints Arts program. And I bounced this off Mark and a few other people, and it's come to fruition. We had a concert in June, we had another concert in October, and hopefully this is the first of a series of authors' nights. I've got a poet lined up to do the spring, and we have another local author who I hope will join us. But Mark has been a member of All Saints for a while now. He's on our vestry, which is our governing board. And so we really appreciate him being here. And the story that he is going to share with you tonight is nothing short of miraculous. And it's a miraculously written book. So Mark, thank you so much for being here. And with Mark is Diana Gilday. Diana is our hostess with the mostest, and she is going to be interviewing him. And so I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Mark and to Diana. But again, welcome to All Saints. We're open Sundays and holidays, so I hope we see you again soon. Oh, the necessaries are around the corner. They're marked. Gents, it's the first left, and ladies, it's the second left. So I think that's it.
All right, like he said, hi, I'm Diana, and I'm not the person being interviewed tonight, so let's get right into that. I'm sitting here with Marc Palmieri, who wears many, many hats: baseball coach, former baseball player, screenwriter, dad, and now author. He is joining us today after the wildly successful release of his book, She Danced with Lightning, about his daughter's struggle with epilepsy in her entire life, but really the last, chapter of it, which is ironic because it's a book, but the last chapter where everything got periodically way worse and kind of how the family dealt with that as a whole. And I'm not going to go on and on about the book right now, so we're going to let him do a couple readings, and then we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to open you guys up for questions. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Does this work? This is working?
It is working.
I see. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and doing all this. This is my favorite room in Bayside, the common room. I haven't been, that was just a few years ago that I stumbled on this church. I asked someone outside, because we raised our kids as pagans or something until that point, and we thought it was time, So I saw someone throwing out boxes outside. I said, are they in English here? We had just moved to Bayside, she's, not that there's anything wrong, I'd go for whatever, but she said, yes, you should see it, you should come. So I came, and everyone was so lovely, and then I saw this room, and then Tom Espenshade started a wonderful series, his coffee house evenings with music and art, and I started reading short stories, and it's been a while since I'd written or published any prose. I'm a playwright and a screenwriter, and that really kind of got me back into writing, in this way, in prose. So I just really wanted to thank everyone for being here and for having this and all the things that you do. So in 2018, my daughter, who had an epilepsy since she was 5 months old. She was 11 at this time now. Her condition worsened, spiraled to a deadly situation. She had to have an emergency brain surgery. And the book takes place, really, the present action from the day in April when things changed from her normal nocturnal seizures, with which we were living fairly successfully. There were thousands of them, but they were at night when she was asleep, so we were there. I was there, usually, on her floor or next to her, so I could be there and make sure they stopped or catch her or prevent her from hurting herself. But they hadn't happened during the day. So the book kind of begins in the area where they did start to happen during the day, and that was April 2018. By mid-June, she was on the operating table. But then it goes back into, it kind of shoots around and covers the whole history of the thing and a lot about epilepsy. And of course, I managed to make it about me. So it's a memoir officially. It's about my life. So I typically, there's a few sections I usually read and just to, kind of as a conversation starter. The first one is pretty much at the beginning of that story, where we're in the spring in April, and she's going along with her usual stuff on 4 different meds or whatever, and it's just a nice spring day where we're at softball practice. I think that's enough of an intro there to this section. I bring 2 pairs of glasses because I was at the drama bookshop a few months ago, and right around now, and I just broke the glasses. So the whole reading I had it was like this the whole time. So people got to enjoy the book, hopefully, but also was his glasses going to fall off? A little dramatic tension there, which is a game within a game. But okay, so all right. So this is us Saturday morning, early, somewhere down in Rockaway or something, at what I think is going to be a beautiful, warmish April day at softball practice. Okay. Anna was in the cage, taking her stance in the dirt patch of a batter's box. I tried the underhand fast pitch, since that's what she'd see in the game, but I wasn't even close. My pitch was at her ankles and barely crossed the plate without bouncing. She swung anyway, level and aggressive. The hips rotated, her wrists turned over nicely, and she kept her head down. It was a damn good-looking swing, and the ball rolled into the net behind her. Bad pitch, I said apologetically. When I was 18, I was drafted as a pitcher by the Toronto Blue Jays, offered a minor league contract, and assigned to their Pioneer League team in Alberta, where it was even colder than Queens in March. Even in my 40s, I like to think I could still bring the heat pretty good, but as for softball's windmill underhand stuff, I was useless. Get the ball, Anna. She was still standing in the batter's box. The ball, Anna, go get it. I checked the time on my phone and looked toward the parking lot. I saw a few more red jerseys. Her team was arriving. I turned back around, but she hadn't moved. Anna, would you please get the ball? She dropped the bat, staring at me. We only have a minute here, I said. Daddy. She ran to me hard. My first thought was that she'd seen someone she didn't like and was taking cover. These were middle school days now, so anything was possible. What's wrong? She threw her arms around me and squeezed, making rhythmic gasps for air. Her leg rose and wrapped itself behind my calf. She began to droop, hanging on to my arms. She's awake, I thought. It's daytime, so this can't be a seizure. Daddy, she said. It was a strange quirk of Anna's frontal lobe epilepsy that the ravage would only happen during sleep. By day, though beaten to hell by the heavy meds and sleep deprivation, Anna would rise, go to school, dance, have friends, and appear to most, even herself, even to us, as having a normal childhood, just one with blood tests every 3 months, a parent on her floor at night, exhaustion, and no sleepovers. We felt that hers was an oddly fortunate version of this horrible disorder. Some nights she could have 7 or 8 seizures across as many hours, and we couldn't imagine that being the case by day. Strange to both hate this thing, yet dread that it might ever change. Sharks, she said. What? Sharks are coming at me. Sharks? I turned around and looked for what? I didn't know. Maybe for sharks. I held her up in front of me. Anna, are you feeling like you're having a seizure? It was a pointless question. Anna wouldn't know what seizures felt like. She'd never remember anything if I asked about them in the morning. I looked into her eyes. She was looking right at me, so they weren't averting. But then her right hand dropped, brushing my arm. I looked at it. It was limp. I grabbed it. "Make a fist," I said, but she couldn't. Then I remembered something. The week prior, she was in the living room, having just gotten up for school. Kristen had already left for work, and Nora was in the shower. I'd gone outside to take the garbage bags in, and when I came back in, Anna was crying. "What's the matter?" I said at the time. "My legs," she sobbed. "They felt heavy." "Well, what do you mean?" "I came downstairs, and they just felt heavy." I said her legs had gone to sleep, that's all. "Did you sit on the toilet too long after you woke up?" I said. "If you sit too long, that can happen." "Maybe. And all is normal now?" "Yeah." "Then don't worry, that's all it was." And just like that, I dismissed it. And since then, there'd been nothing out of the norm. We were up to 10 nights of peace. Or maybe I recalculated quickly. Tonight would make the 10th. So it was 9. Still a long stretch. It had to be at least 9, I thought. But even 8 would be encouraging. Was it 8? Maybe tonight would make 9. Anna reached for her chest and pulled at her jersey. Her eyes darted left, then she rolled back. Her lips turned blue and she collapsed. As her head hit my chest, I remembered something else, clear as day. There was a seizure. Sometime last night, deep in the night. It was on the shorter side maybe, or maybe I caught it only halfway through, but there was a seizure last night for sure. "Hospital," my father said, "right now." He already had her bat and bag. I lifted Anna up and ran toward the parking lot. Red jerseys passed by in my periphery. "Mark," one of them said. It was head coach Ari. She was carrying the team helmet bag, holding her clipboard, looking at me as I approached and nodding sadly. I looked in her eyes. It seemed they were asking me questions, the questions I was asking myself. "Is this it, Mark? Is the scene finally here? The one you knew would come someday? The one you can't survive? The one you don't want to survive?" Nearly a dozen years of it. Half awake. Dragged forward by delusions and denial, pharmaceuticals, ketogenic diet, gluten-free diet, marijuana pills, fish oil pills, melatonin pills, coconut oil, prayers. Nothing would ever work. It wanted her dead. It's what it wanted since that November afternoon when she was the length of a pitching rubber at 5 months old. And I still slept in a bed. Anyone who knew us had to know this scene would come someday. It's what makes tragedy so moving in the theater. Oedipus, Romeo and Juliet, Cyrano de Bergerac, name it. Everyone knows the ending is unbearable and tragedy, but somehow, even as the story rolls headlong toward it, the audience thinks maybe, just maybe, this time it'll be different. It's part of what they call the suspension of disbelief. It's a useful human ability. Gets you through until the ending. Despite my best efforts to avoid thinking about it, how our life with Anna was so much more likely than most to come to an early end, I couldn't always resist. I'd picture the final scene playing out in countless ways and places. I would see it most every night, really, my cheek on her head, the silent inner storm stealing her from the world for 90 long seconds. I'd whisper that I was there, waiting for her to come back, holding her, and that I loved her. That someday this would end one way or another. It had to. I'd see it, the ending. There in her room, at school, on the street, in the car, at a party, at a dance class, or face down one morning in her bed above mine, dead. I saw it in so many ways, but I hadn't seen it like this. At a ball field, on the first beautiful day of a long-awaited spring. Thank you. So within the 4 weeks of that spiral, again, the lifestyle was nothing new. We'd been living with this for her whole life. But then, with that change, and it kept getting a little worse. So we ended up at one hospital, and another hospital. And within that time until June, there were 4 different diagnoses as to why this was happening. The one we had been living with for years, which was wrong. The one she was originally diagnosed with at 5 months old, which turned out to be right. marijuana overdose was one, because she was on medical marijuana, sort of. And then panic disorder was one that she was also, she was diagnosed with at Cohen's, And they saw her on an emergency basis, so it's like, this book doesn't blame anyone, or, we respect all the doctors that ever saw her. I mean, they kept her alive for a long time. And she's a very complicated case. But sometimes when you're only there on an emergency basis, they can't see everything. They don't know everything. So at first, it was kind of good news. A panic disorder. It's like, oh, great. It's not an epilepsy change in seizures. It's something that we can deal with. It's something that she can get therapy for. And that's what they told us. They're panic attacks, not seizures that we've been seeing. So that's where we're at. We're about 4 weeks, about a month into the change. And, we decided that the first thing to do is we have to turn our house, which is not so famous for serenity, into like a serenity center, like a place that you go and kind of feel like you're going to do hot yoga or something. So that was the first project, and the other project was I had to get her a therapist, So that's where we're at this point. I'd had 3 or 4 therapists in my adult life. The first 2 were before I was married, usually as a part of an impulse to, quote, fix whatever the problem must be with me that caused another relationship to end. And there were many. But part of me also bought into the cliche that a real New York writer had to have a real Manhattan shrink with whom to discuss the trials of a life of the mind. But since being married, my latest 2 therapists heard me talk mostly about epilepsy and trying to preserve some kind of sane marriage around it. It was useful to me, no doubt, but I'd stopped going mostly out of an inability to fit the sessions into my crazy schedule. Finding therapists for me was always easy. Whatever health insurance I was on would provide a list of covered doctors, and I'd pick one. Child and family therapists, I'd now learn, weren't as easy to find, at least in our area of Queens. We weren't too far from Great Neck, which is known for an abundance of psychotherapists, so I hoped to find someone within a reasonable distance. It took a while, and evidently, the business had adopted some strategies from the online dating industry. I was surprised to find photos and testimonials of the doctors as if they were prospective hotels, restaurants, or singles. Their profiles offered life and career details about themselves and their particular philosophy. Ironically, all this information made choosing harder, since I found myself judging faces more than anything else, not really buying the personal statements as anything but sales strategy. I wished it was just all names and phone numbers on my Screen Actors Guild list. In the end, the decision was made easier because most didn't take the Screen Actors Guild insurance. One referred us to a doctor only 15 minutes from our house. She didn't have a slick website or photo or statement anywhere. I called, she called me back and sounded like what I always thought a therapist should sound like, sympathetic but down to business. We were fortunate. There'd been a cancellation and a slot was open early the next week. I booked it. I moved on to the next steps in our response plan to the possibility that this was a panic disorder. I bought an app for my phone called Calm. Then I went to the drugstore, asked the pharmacist for any over-the-counter anti-stress products, and was directed to a magnesium powder product called Naturally Calm. I planned to play the app at night while Anna slept and give her the powder to, as it read on the box, relax nerves, muscles, and blood flow on a cellular level during the day. Those chores all felt good. Instead of waiting to see if the clobazam, the medicine they had given her, the new medicine, had any effect, which I suppose would be shown by whether or not Anna resumed having only the nocturnal seizures we were used to, or finding out if cutting out the marijuana would help, or relying on the next neurologist appointment for yet another round of EEGs, I was making moves, trying things, looking for a solution. I even started to revisit the diet options we'd quit, gluten-free, paleo, ketogenic, etc. I didn't mention this to Anna. She hated that stuff. Such thinking definitely wouldn't promote calm in her. But I did the research. I wondered if I could find food that adhered to these diets but tasted so good that Anna would never even know. A fantasy, but I wondered. This had always been the mental and emotional balancing act, the cloak and dagger, the shell game I played on myself. For these few years, her seizures hitting only during sleep allowed us a sense that Anna's life was some version of livable. The seizures would come and go, and we'd fall back to sleep. Our sleep and our life could resume, the monster having moved on for the moment. But in times like these, when we were unmoored, disoriented by a new onset of symptoms, there really wasn't any escaping the reality that this had all been nothing but an undeniable nightmare from the beginning. Beyond Anna's current situation, also had tons to do. Even as an adjunct, mid-April had always felt intense. The final papers or exams and all the reading and grading I had to get done by the spring semester deadline. But now, as a full-timer with the Mercy College job, I was learning how things get as the academic year comes to its end and graduation approaches. On top of the classwork, there were college-wide, school-wide, department-wide meetings, committees, campus events, and open houses. In the theater club, their final performance was approaching fast, and I was their advisor. It was going to be a lot harder navigating through all my responsibilities at the college with all that was happening, but I tried to keep quiet about it on campus. I told my chair the basics the next time I saw him in the office. He was helpful to talk to, as always, and encouraged me to take whatever time I needed to be at home, but I didn't at all want to assume the role of the brand new faculty member with a disturbing personal life. Even after all my years at City College, only a handful of trusted colleagues really knew about Anna. One night, as calm played the lulling sounds of raindrops hitting jungle leaves, as clobazam, lacosamide, and water-dissolved magnesium coursed through Anna's bloodstream, she sat up out of sleep in a seizure and fell off the bed before I even moved. She hit the wood floor head first, somehow missing the buffer of blankets and pillows I'd arranged. The sound of the impact was bone to wood, like the crack of a baseball hitting the bat. The days she'd been in after a seizure would normally put her right back to sleep, but this time the pain woke her completely. She cried hard, holding her head as I ran downstairs for an ice pack. I held her in her bed, keeping the pack on her brow where I could see a bump collecting itself. It was near 3 a.m. "Daddy," she said through short breaths. "Yes, baby." "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "It's a weird question." She sniffled and shivered. "Anything, please. Ask it." "It's about boys." I was surprised and happy to hear this. A normal question. She was in middle school, almost 12, thinking like kids do, even after however many thousands of seizures, these recent new symptoms, and even after a headfirst crash to the floor. "Oh, geez," I said teasingly. "Boys." Tears still in her eyes, she smiled as if she knew I'd react like a fool. "Stop, I'm serious." "Ask me, I know it's serious," I said. "And I think I'm a boy, so maybe I'll know the answer." She closed her eyes and adjusted the ice pack, then looked up at the ceiling. "So what's the question?" I said. "What boy will ever like me with all of this?" "All of them," I guttered. This was the enemy winning now. "All the boys, Anna. They will be lining up outside, and I will be screaming at them to get the heck home. I will be guarding you until you are maybe 30 or 40. There will be too many boys liking you." Anna laughed. It was a genuine laugh, I thought. "I knew you'd say that," she said. "You did? But it's okay." "What do you mean, but?" "It's okay that you're lying," she said. "I think it's okay to lie if you love someone and have to." I went on, and she laughed at my visions of her future, a famous dancer with her own famous dance company, a diploma from Mercy College hanging in her room in her splendid apartment, where her father stood thwarting the unfit suitors and monsters. Me, her old, sleepless, stalwart guardian outside her door, or on the floor, if I needed to be. Thank you. So I have one more. If you guys are still here. It's when we go see the therapist, which is one of the worst days of my life. She had started to show, so one of the things that started to happen was, and we learned later, it's because of the seizures. Her behavior started to change, and she started to just like curse like a sailor, and just, like it wasn't her anymore. But with panic attacks, that's what we thought they were. We didn't want to be too harsh. We didn't want to so it was like a dilemma, but she's walking around F-bombing, and just like she suddenly gained like 5 years of wit and, you know, like, and just razor sharp vindictiveness, and you know, it was kind of comic, but it was also like, you know, is this part of the thing, you know? But we tried to leave it alone until at least till we got the therapist. We finally got to the therapist a few days later. Okay. At dismissal time, Anna came to my car, pulled over. I hadn't heard anything from the school nurse all day. I could see she still had the bloated face, but she seemed more upbeat than she'd been. This immediately put me in high hopes that the medicine adjustments were helping, and I became even more energized to start with therapy. "How was today?" I asked as we pulled away. "Did you feel anything weird?" "Yes, the same." "What do you mean by that?" "I felt stuff." "Well, what stuff?" "The same." "Well, can you get more specific, Anna?" I said. "Did you feel your heart race, your legs numb? What did you feel? Did you go to the nurse's office?" She didn't answer. I looked in the rearview mirror when we came to a light. I saw her shiver a couple of times. Some silence passed as we drove on. "You ready to meet the therapist?" I said. "Yes," she said. "Good, we're heading there now." "I'm going to vent all my shit." Sounded like someone else. "What did you say?" I said. "I'm going to vent all my bullshit." "Anna, what is that?" "What is what?" The only time I'd ever heard Anna curse was when she'd repeat back a curse I'd uttered. Nora did the same thing. I tried not to curse at home, but every now and then I sure did. For instance, if I'd asked 4 times for Nora and Anna to shut the television off, maybe the only way to get it turned off was when I followed with a louder, I said, "Turn the fucking TV off." Every time, Anna and Nora would jump on the chance to say, "Okay, we'll turn the fucking TV off." Then we'd have the obligatory, "Don't curse," and "But you cursed," exchange that always ended with the even more laughable, "Don't say what I say," followed by their saying, "Then why did we turn the TV off?" But here in the car, this was unprompted cursing. I looked back again to see if she was waiting for some kind of reaction out of me, but she just looked out the window. "So what's with the language, Anna?" "What language?" "You just cursed twice." "Sorry," she said, with an ironic tone, as if this question surprised her. "What's with the tude?" I said. "Whatever, just drive, man," she said. "Wow, let's not talk like that, okay?" "Whatever." "Is something wrong, Anna?" "Something wrong," she said, snidely, like I was an idiot. "You think?" "Why are you acting like this?" "Ugh, you don't get it," she said, completely sincere. "I need my therapist." "You need your therapist? You haven't even met her yet." I wondered if she told friends she was seeing a therapist today, and one of them gave her the term "vent my bullshit." I never heard Anna use the word vent before either. Whatever was happening here, I figured I wouldn't dig in too deep with the tit for tat. We were headed to a psychologist after all, so I left it at that and stayed silent for the rest of the ride. The office was classic. It was what I was used to with my own therapist experiences. Minimalist, neat, easy on the senses. It had a small sofa on which Anna made herself immediately comfortable, and 2 armchairs where the doctor and I sat. The PhD diploma and however many other degrees and certifications hung amid a few understated pieces of impressionist art. The day was bright outside, but in here all was lit by a shaded lamp beside the sofa. When we first spoke on the phone, I gave the therapist an extensive description of all recent developments and, of course, Anna's history. I'd expected to sign some forms, give a copay, and wait outside in my car while Anna began this new frontier of self-examination. But I was asked to sit in. On one hand, I hoped Anna would get through the 45-minute session without any physical disruption. But on the other, if an event had to happen, I thought it might not be a bad thing for it to happen in front of the psychologist tasked to identify the cause and come up with a prevention. As I sat in the armchair, the sight before me was my 11-year-old laid out on a sofa across the small room from a shrink. There it was, I thought, a live portrait of parenting failure. But before I could dwell too long in self-recrimination, Anna breezily launched into a sustained bitching session about school, some frenemies in her grade, her sister, and her parents. The same jarring looseness I'd witnessed in the car carried right on. "My parents are very mean and very strict," she said. "Cruel people." "How are they cruel, Anna?" the doctor asked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Well, they're like, Anna, do this, and Anna, do that." And I'm like tired and like, shit. Anna, I said. Well, are the things they want you to do important? The doctor continued, unfazed. Yes, I said respectfully, I think they are. No, Anna said. Oh, you mean like finish your homework, brush your teeth, make your bed, that stuff? I continued. The doctor glanced at me, evaluating. I tried not to wonder what she was thinking. Yes, Anna said, or put your phone away, or get in the shower. Yeah, Anna, well, those things are sort of necessary. Sorry, I said. I know, dude, but all in a row? What does that even mean? I said. Like, chill, give me some time, bro. One thing at a time. This had gotten ridiculous fast. A few days ago, I was in my father's car holding her as if she was having what I thought was a heart attack. We were told she had an acute anxiety disorder and to treat it with psychotherapy to unearth the source of her stress. This was it? Making her bed? Don't you think your parents have to teach you those things? The doctor asked. And they never hold hands, Anna said. That silenced the room for a good 10 seconds. Now I was about to get my copay's worth. Who doesn't hold hands, the doctor said. My parents. Another silence. Your parents don't hold hands, the doctor said. They don't love each other. Anna, I began. They don't hold hands or kiss or hug. Her eyes watered. Mommy and Daddy love each other, I said, and we love our girls very much. And they don't sleep in the same room because of me. Anna, I began, but nothing else. They'll get a divorce, she said. Nobody's getting a divorce, I said. I turned to look at the therapist. I couldn't really guarantee that about a divorce, and she knew it. You're always yelling and fighting, Anna continued. We won't get a divorce, Anna. I wondered if the doctor was finding this the simplest case she'd ever come across. Kid made a nervous wreck by two type A, highly stressed, overworked, befuddled, and scared out of their wits parents. Poor kid, she must be thinking. No wonder she has panic attacks. This was it, I thought, just hearing Anna say these things. It's a panic disorder. And we caused it. Something of a crackpot theory about Shakespeare's play had occurred to me some years after Anna's epilepsy lanced into our lives. I thought I knew why Shakespeare ended his comic Love Labour's Lost like a tragedy, with the lovers parting rather than marrying as the audience would have expected. It had never been done in the history of theater. Shakespeare's young son Hamnet died around the time he was writing it. I imagined the great playwright at his London theater office at his desk working on his hilarious rom-com, probably called Love's Labour's 1. Then a messenger arrives from Stratford, where his wife and children lived. He's flattened at the news, of course, so what does he do? Now that his heart is broken. His marriage was already pretty rough with all the distance, and now this. How does he even think about putting a new comedy on the stage? He changes the ending, that's what he does. And the title, nearly 5 acts of romantic comedy before he brings news of death onto the stage, and everyone ends up alone. The comedy is lost. Hamnet was the same age as Anna when he died, and Love's Labour's Lost premiered a year later. That was our marriage, maybe. Love, then labor. Marriage, then a kid. Next, for the unlucky some, it all gets lost. Kristen and I had gotten together in the most romantic and comedic circumstances, and we for a bit came to know how to be characters in that kind of plot. But once Anna's seizures came, and with them an everyday sadness, that happy rom-com was far over. What the hell were Kristen and I, who only knew each other for a few young, fun years, doing now? This wasn't what we foresaw when we got married. We'd ended up in the wrong play, half hoping every day that the curtain would come down on it. Anna, I said, your mom and I do hold hands. The truth was, Kristen and I did hold hands every now and then, but not like Anna meant. These were moments Anna would never see, how would she? They'd be rolling her away for an MRI, lifting her into an ambulance, or pinning her down for the needles and wires and tubes, and we, her goddamn parents, hands clutched, watched her disappear from however close those doctors would let us get. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for reading that for us, Mark. Okay, so Anna, thankfully, has been seizure-free for the past 3 years. All of this happened around 2018. How long after this happened did you decide, I need to write about this, I need to make this story, I need to put this pen to paper and make this a book, I need to let other people know this?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's 3.5 years. And so like, on that end, you never know. You just never know. But week goes by, month goes by, you start like, oh wow, it's a new reality. She hasn't had one, and maybe this one. So yeah, we're there now. I'm a writer anyway. I write. I've written tons. I've written 7 plays, and I was intending. I had just finished a play. And that was what I was doing. I was having a lot of meetings, my agent, and all of that, just doing that whole hustle, all that ass kissing that a writer has to do to get things going. And then it was my playwriting agent. She said, "You fire me if you want for this question," but that was quite a story, because the Daily News did a thing, and there was coverage of this story. It was like kind of I hadn't thought of it, but then of course I put it in my brain, and then I just realized, well, it has everything that I usually look for when I write a play, which is that, I learned something, I changed by experiencing or observing or living through something, and when I do that, when I feel like I've changed in some way, even if it's just awareness of something that's new, there's probably a story I can write, and I certainly was changed by this, by learning from her and her courage and just in my own cowardice through the whole thing. And I started to see how it could be done in a way that was for other people, not just like an account of a brutal medical thing, but a story about parenting, really. I mean, you don't really need a hideous health condition to be terrified for your child, right? I mean, it all comes down to the same thing. To what degree do you protect them? To what degree do you let them go? So really, that's really what it's about. In this case, it was just writ large because she was dying, and I didn't want her to do the things she wanted to do in those months, and she fought me on it and won. And that's what I thought the story, the present actions. But I also felt like it would be good to write a story about what living with epilepsy is, because there's not that much out there. There's no Rain Man movie. There's no Philadelphia. There's no like major narrative that brought that into the mainstream and made it not something stigmatized or, and so I thought it was a good thing to do. And also I thought I could get it done with a beginning, middle, and end kind of narrative. So, yeah.
Just a little bit of a follow-up to exactly what you said. As a writer,
Hang on a second, because we got people at home. I'm going to give you a mic.
oh, no, I can speak up.
I can repeat the question too.
There's a live stream. They wouldn't be able to hear you on camera. Yeah.
There you go.
1 and 2.
Thank you. Hi, very much as a follow-up to your question, and you being a writer, do you journal as a normal part of your day, and were you journaling through the beginning of this situation? Were you able to refer to that, or is this something that you had to put together in retrospect?
That's a great question. So, do I journal? I've been keeping a journal for 35 years. My mother gave me a notebook, probably just hoping that it would make me maybe try to take myself seriously as a student and not get arrested or something, just something constructive. Yeah. My mother was like, can you just take a notebook and write your feelings out instead of, whatever you did. And that's the best training for a writer, right? So that helped. Yeah, that helped, because sometimes, especially when you're upset about something, I can, woe is me, and start trying to sound like D.H. Lawrence in the journal, but rather I just would write like what I did today. We had the MRI. This is, you're kind of a zombie. So sure, that helped. That helped a lot. Just going back and when did things happen? Do I remember this? And some things I didn't remember. But also, we all have this now, for better and worse. We just have like a complete like history of our lives on emails, and like the sent box and all of that. So that actually was a huge, and all the medical papers, all the discharge papers. So I had every medical detail and down, because it was all on paper all through the years, all the way back till she was, since she was born. So that helped.
Another question related to that: were you beside your own. In other words, was there anyone else who was able to provide you with some sort of memory or documentation, or, an ability to embellish or make this even more detailed?
Yeah, I think what the question is like, did you rely on outside, like other people in your life to help you remember, I guess is basically what, one of the lessons I've learned since is that I really didn't share much of it with many people at all. Yeah, those are whatever happened in those sessions, were pretty crystal clear, because it was all about that. But in terms of just consulting other people in my life, I think when they read this, a lot of them come to me and they're like, "Oh my God, like I had no idea, you should have told me, what all that." And I said I didn't really have an idea either. I was just going through it. I didn't really know, I just didn't want to. And that's just part of epilepsy. I think it's like, hey, how you doing? Oh, well, I had like, you don't want to do that. That's part of a reason we don't talk about it, because it's so miserable. Why do that? If you don't have it in that moment, if you're not having a seizure that moment, why dwell on it? So I think that's part of what I did. I didn't pretend it wasn't there. I just didn't feel like burdening anyone else with my miserable existence,
Kind of on that note, we are going to have a question section for Q&As in 1 sec. I would say, you want to go?
No, it's just that it appeared that you needed a stronger support system than you had. And are you saying that there are no support systems for people who have this situation of children with epilepsy?
No, I'm definitely not saying that. There was a support system. It's just, I think, when you're the front liner with a child, it just didn't feel like I had room to pursue that. If I wanted to, yes, of course I had a huge, our family, and in the book there's a lot about that, about the other people that were involved, for sure. The schools were great, the folks here were great, we had plenty of people. It's more do people who are, does the child have the support system is really my priority at that point, So yeah, good question though. But I will tell you, some people with epilepsy don't have it. They don't have it. They don't know where to get it, for sure.
I'm going to go back to your answer about how you didn't want to burden anybody with this. You would be like, yeah, my daughter has epilepsy, and kind of end the conversation there. In some way or form, was writing this book and getting to kind of burden the pages with it a form of catharsis for you?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I had a few motivations. I didn't want to. It's ugly, what went on at times. And that's not the book is. I hope the book is fun as well. Like she had a great childhood, and it was really just those 4 months that things got really theatrically bad. But it was the worry and the struggle at night and all of that. But she had a mainstream existence. So getting it out, like just as a drive, I felt like I know that I know that some people will be. Their eyes will open to this thing. I know that, but I also knew more so I was thinking about the people that deal with epilepsy and that they would find this very familiar. And I do remember in those 10 years or so how much it meant to us to hear anyone talking about epilepsy, just to know it, you hear the word seizures. Oh, what did you just say? I know about that. And it was important. It was a fellowship that you could easily feel isn't there, which is ironic since 1 in 20 people will have a diagnosis of epilepsy at some point. 1 in 20, 50 million people in the world. So it's, and that could just mean 2 seizures in your life, but it is everywhere. And I can see that now, and people are coming from everywhere to talk to me about this now, from all over the world. It's very prevalent, but it didn't feel that way. It feels very lonely. And so I knew by doing this, I knew those readers would know what I'm doing, and why.
So I want to go to a bit with the title of the book, and not to quote unquote spoil anything, although it's a real life story. It's not quite a spoiler. But at the end, all she really wanted to do was dance in her concert. And you title the book, She Danced with Lightning. And that those last couple of chapters where all these episodes are coming back to back to back to back, and then she just wants to dance. That is all very theatrical, and part of it is, when you were writing this, did you ever consider making it like a screenplay or a play, which is what you're more familiar with? Like, why didn't you go that route, or if you ever considered that route and decided to go the route of prose instead?
Great question, and really for any story, that I've worked in all the forms. When I started, I was in L.A. and I started with, I'd written one of the worst Hollywood movies in history with Jennifer Love Hewitt and that gang, Miramax. After I harmed society, I moved back to New York and got into the theater and wrote plays, but I wrote prose. And so, yeah, but you think that way. You do say, what does this want to be? How could this be a play? How could it be with only a few people? How could it be in one location? How could it be dialogue driven? This and that. There's definitely a movie in this. Where's the camera? That right there? My agent is Alex Glass, 212-621. There's a movie, there's talk of that. But that, I actually did that, as I just mentioned him jokingly, but he's a great editor, my literary agent. And, when we were working on something a long time ago, he said it was prose and he was a book, and he used to think about what the movie would be. And that's a help me in shaping this thing. Mm-hmm. Because I was raised on, like most of us here, like we're raised on movies, we're raised on TV. We kind of have a natural, instinct for that kind of experience. So I did think that I wanted to talk about, my perspective, because it was me who learned something. It was me who changed the most here. To get back to your question about the lightning, in the final weeks, she couldn't walk straight. She could barely see. She was almost in permanent seizure, which is something they call status epilepticus. There's not much time in between the seizures, and that could be deadly, and we had to administer the emergency meds, all of that at home, and really it was just them assembling the team that they wanted at Weill Cornell. And so as far as I was concerned, she was on the couch waiting for this surgery to get her into the hospital. That was my job, like to keep her alive long enough to get to the hospital. Kept putting on her tights, putting on, and wanted to go, and, no, sit down, scene, argument, whatever. So I agreed, okay, fine, go to class, and I'll be outside, so when you drop, they'll carry you down, and I'll drive you home. And it happened most of the classes. She would go 45 minutes, start to have a problem, and then leave. And then for some crazy reason, I thought, anyway, she insisted, but I'm going to be in the recital in front of 500 people at Queensborough College. She's going to perform with her company, 20 numbers across 2 shows, and go out there and do cartwheels and pirouettes, and this intricate choreography is a high level that she's a competitive dancer. And I was like, well, clearly that's not happening. And she was ferocious about it, to the point where I kind of lost it, on her. I mean, I was just, you are like I once was when I hurt my shoulder and had to sit out from baseball. It's responsible. You're a part of a team. Sit out. You'll be back next year and you'll be all stronger and all that. And she said, but you're not like me. Well, what do you mean? You knew you'd be alive next season, Oh, yeah, that was a zinger. So I was like, you're going to be alive next season. Oh, I don't know that. And I said, it's my responsibility. You're not going. She said, I said, if there's a lightning storm in your head, I can see it in your eyes. If I let you go right now, you're going to drop like a rag. And I said, if it was outside, if it, this is what a parent has to do. If it was lightning outside, I wouldn't let you go play in it. And she said, I'd go dance with it. It was my last chance. And so that was where the title came from. So, but I was shut down. I was overruled, put in my place, and she went to the thing, and I refused to go. It was one of the biggest mistakes I made in my life. And it was the one day in 60 some odd days that no seizure came, and she danced in both shows. Yeah, and that's kind of when I thought, like, oh, that's a story. I have that. I'll put that in my pocket, like, you know.
Journaled that one down.
Yeah, that was I learned something there, you know, like I, you know, from the privilege of having perfect health, what do I know about telling someone that doesn't, what's enough and how to wait, you know. So that's what I learned, you know. What business did I have?
Do you ever wonder, is there some way this is not just a coincidence?
Question is there some way this is not just a coincidence?
Yes. In other words, was there something about something in her that, or that day, or the way she approached it? I mean, is this something you thought about? I mean, I don't know the answer to the actual question, but I'm just wondering, do you say to yourself, how did this happen? Is this divine intervention? Is this what, you know, what do you think about that?
I don't know. You know, certainly I've racked my brains, like, how could that happen? Like, she was crippled, really, you know, for weeks, and like, this didn't make any sense. So was it some kind of adrenaline? You know, there's just, I believe in science. I mean, you know, there's a scientific answer. There absolutely is. I have no idea what it is, but it's certainly wherever it originated was her absolute determination to do it. I mean, you know, so whatever the chemistry answer is, it was, you know, it was just someone who knew it, envisioned it, and then did it. So yeah.
Speaking of that determination, now that she's not actively, you know, in a state of crisis, like actively having the potential to, you know, drop one into, do you still see that urgency and determination in Anna 3 years later?
Total slacker.
Okay, never mind. Do not tell her I asked that question.
You know what? She plays varsity soccer at Holy Cross. She's still dancing. She's working really hard on her homework, working really hard on her social life also. You know, loves her friends. Just did a real, you know, a movie a few days, you know, in a horror movie, a real, you know, horror movie. She does a lot of things. And, you know, that's not her personality, like what she was in those moments, those warish moments with me. That's not Anna. Like, she doesn't act like that. She doesn't, you know, she's always involved in a lot of things. Sometimes it feels like too many things. She's conflicted a lot of the time. It's a hustle, man. So look at my mileage on my car. You know, but so, you know, so we know, I guess she would be if someone's trying to stop her, you know. Yeah.
And on Anna, has she read the book? Has she shared her thoughts on this? Like, I know someone who wasn't a teenager that long ago, if I think someone wrote a book about me, I'd have pretty mixed feelings on it. So I wanted, has she shared her thoughts about the book with you?
So she listened to the Audible book, which is a whole funny story because I had to, you know, recorded books, produce that, and I had to audition for it. And I got it. I got the role of myself. And so that's, you know, a lot of, I have heard from people that have chosen to read the book that way or listen to the book. So that she chose that. She chose that, of course, like most of the teenagers would probably like read the book. Man, you know, I could just listen to it, you know. Yeah, she seems to be game. She seems to be happy about it, you know. Again, she doesn't, I don't know how many people at her school really know. I mean, the teachers know, you know, but she doesn't really talk about it. It's starting to be inevitable because there's the social media, it's in the news, you know, like their friends are seeing this thing, you know. But she plays it down really, you know. She doesn't, just like when she was going through it, she wasn't really there, you know. It's in a way, she wasn't there. She didn't remember this so much. So it upsets her sometimes. She said she was upset at times and remembered certain things, and it was hard to listen to. But I, you know, think she thinks it's cool to, you know, she's just glad I'm like, you know, doing something.
All right, well, I think that is enough questions from me. I think everyone's probably sick of hearing my voice. So we're going to open up the panel, all of you guys, to questions, as well as anyone that is watching online. So whether that be the live stream, Facebook, whatsoever. If you have one of those questions, you can comment them. and Father Byrne will read them out. I'm volunteering him to do that now, but if anyone here has a question, please raise your hand, and don't start asking the question until you get the microphone so the people online can also hear you. Thank you.
Right. Can I give you the microphone? You're much better at that than I am.
Okay.
Oh. Nope, never mind.
Never mind.
I'll just be Carol Merrill, and you got to be old to understand that. But
So it's open up now. Ask all your burning questions.
I actually have one. I'm holding the mic, so what the heck? How did Nora do with all this? She's not that much in the book, as I recall. But I've asked her about it since. You know how she likes being part of the book, and Nora's just Nora. But it has to have been tough on her for so much of your attention to have to be on Anna so much of the time. But how did she manage through it?
Yeah, we did always try to keep that in mind. No question. And it happens in the book that people do ask about her, and I write about moments of where you see that clearly, that she's not getting the same. The same treatment or the same attention, that kind of thing. She was very involved in a lot of the action, and I think that, ironically, while it's traumatic, kind of helped things, because there were times where she would be the first responder in these moments. There were times where she prevented Anna from falling downstairs, steep wooden stairs. There were times where she was the one to alert us of a seizure. There were times where she would want to sleep next to her with her hands over her head to try to stop them. She involved herself. So what I know about Nora is that she's a very strong personality. She enjoys. She has a lot of freedom. She's highly accomplished in dance. She's at a special dance school that she got into in Manhattan. She's feeling really good about herself, and I think she probably right now feels freed from something because she doesn't have to feel that way anymore. So we're in a cycle right now where she's feeling liberated from a lot of that suffering, and things just happen to be going well. So right now, we're trying to keep that alive and just honor her for all that she was part of, helping us and loving her sister, also trying to just encourage her to enjoy what she's earned now, but it was just something we tried to stay aware of. And I must say, we got a lot of help with that. Other people were aware of her, and made efforts to include her or just directly bring her to somewhere or have their own direct relationships with Nora because they were worried about that. Yeah.
All right, we're going to jump to a question from our online audience, which you don't have to read out. I got it right here. Don't worry. Saving you from a job. This comes from Rochester. As Anna had started to grow as a bit older and develop more of her artistic identity with dance and stuff, have you noticed her medical experience shaping that? Did you see any of that through her dance? Especially even now.
This is Anna or Nora?
Anna.
Can you read the question again? I'm sorry.
As Anna had started to grow a bit older and develop an artistic identity, have you noticed her medical experience shaping that identity?
Great question. I definitely see the medical experience shaping her identity in general. She talks about wanting to work with children with special needs when she's older. She has always been very upset in situations where kids would make fun of other kids for whatever reason. She was very sensitive to that. And I think that probably had a part of it, had to do with that a bit, because she might maybe think she understands maybe what's behind their lives and their families that other people aren't thinking about when they're having fun with it. So it certainly has and I think she wants to be a bit of a message of stick-to-itiveness and hope that things can change because it changed for her. Artistically, I'll tell you, it takes guts. She's been in live stage performances on the college level. She was just working with Hollywood actors, a couple weeks ago. And she's been in movies, other movies, in Shakespeare movies where she has to recite like pages of iambic pentameter. She's not afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. And I guess, after hundreds of blood tests and having half your skull removed for half a day, I guess, you have a sense of, well, how bad could it get? What am I going to do? Forget a line? Oh, well. So she's brave with it. And that takes, at this point at 16, an artistic identity has a lot to do with just the guts to be involved in it. Yeah. So she has that. She likes that stuff a lot. Yeah.
All right. We'll flip it back to the in-person audience. Anyone got any burning questions, any inquiries, and any thoughts? They don't have to be questions. All right. Right over there.
Hi.
Hi. I was just wondering, you dedicate the book to the grandparents, and being one myself and having two grandchildren in, similar situations. I was wondering if you could comment on that, how the grandparents, we talked about the support system that you had, but your dedication got to me. So how do you feel that they acted as part of the support system?
Oh, yeah, very much, in all kinds of ways. Literal, like just direct ways, like pulling up to the house, speeding in the car, and driving us to the hospital. From helping us buy medical marijuana. Well, they weren't medical, really. They weren't legal yet. I had to smuggle them in from Colorado. I became a drug smuggler for a while, low CBD chews. From helping us pay for that stuff, financially, they're neither, they work, they're still working. I mean, it's not like they're rich people. It's just, they were always there. But, part of it was that, I'm the oldest of 9 children. They raised 9 children. I can't imagine that. Why would you do that? I don't know. They did that. My wife's family has 5 children, bad enough. And so I'm amazed by them. And I can't imagine what this was like for them, and I'm not sure that we would have kept sane without them being there to, as torn apart they must have been and as terrified that they must have been. They still had a determination that things would get better. They, whether they believed it or not, I don't know how they would. There were bad times, but they kept researching and kept encouraging and kept, telling us how great Anna was, and somehow they were just symbols of endurance and faith that things would change. But really, I did devote that to the book to them because I never could. I could never give back. I could never help with however awful it was for them. I could never take that back. I just feel like we're the parents. We were there. I mean, they were helpless, and they were right there all the time. And I felt like of anybody, I wanted to say, now you don't have to worry. Now I want you to know the story and how much you were a part of it. But it's for now, it's over. And I wanted to make sure they believed it. Thanks for that question.
All right, so we still have no questions from our online audience, so all those people behind those computer screens, please get your thoughts and comments in. But until then, anyone out here in the real universe have any questions, any comments?
I think you should talk about how you took that medical marijuana.
I think you should also talk about that part of the book.
Happy to. Happy to. That's a good...
Emphasis on medical.
So I will find out. It's a quick section, and it should. It probably is. Yeah. So when Anna was 9, Nora was 7. Sanjay Gupta the year before came with on a special on CNN about medical marijuana helping children with Dravet syndrome out in Colorado. Dravet is a hideously severe epilepsy, constant seizures. It made good data for this product because if they stopped, they stopped right away. You know, so someone like Anna wouldn't really qualify for these experimental treatments. And medical marijuana was illegal everywhere. New York still, federally, all of that. So there wasn't any here. Cuomo finally got around to signing the bill that would make it legal, but it was going to take a year or two to get the dispensaries, the licensing, all of that. So everyone in the epilepsy community wanted to try this. This was like the most amazing idea possible, that a natural plant that doesn't make them high, it's the CBD, could possibly stop or help with seizures. It was too good to be true. People moved from their home states. Jersey, Christie, announced that not on his watch would he ever allow this to happen, right? And so people moved out of New Jersey to go to Colorado, just for their kid to get medical marijuana. So we did one. I was talking to an adjunct at City Colleges before I worked at Mercy, and we were just bemoaning the state of things because we thought we were going to get fired because of the budget and all this. And she asked about Nora, actually, and I said. Then she asked me about medical marijuana. Have you tried medical marijuana? A lot of people would ask that because they didn't know, that you couldn't get it. So I told her that we couldn't get it. She's like, I can get it. You can? Well, not the medical stuff, but the same concoction, like in chews. I was like, how? I'm from Colorado. I go home sometimes. My friend owns a dispensary, and I bring it back. I fly it back. You fly it back? How? I put it in the luggage. No big deal. I do it all the time. I was like, jeez. So so I got into drug smuggling with her. I funded her to go back, and get boxes, and so we started that. And for the first 3 weeks, it actually seemed we started giving her tiny slices of this stuff, and which was technically child abuse, I guess, like giving her a Schedule A, drug. But it seemed to have her sleep deeper and start to work. So this is one night during that little time, and this is the best one to end on anyway. So it was a school night in mid-December when I remembered. Oh, I should say this: when the first package came, the guy in the dispensary in Colorado threw in a little baggie with the non-THC stuff, a little baggie that had a Post-it in it that said, "For the parents, they need it." And it wasn't the low
just
THC stuff. It was the opposite stuff, which I would never. So I put it back in the fridge, and we never touched it. I just tried to smoke a joint a couple times. It just didn't work. It made me sick. So I wasn't a marijuana person. So until this night. So it was a school night in mid-December when I remembered the little baggie our source had thrown into that first package from Denver. My fall semester had just ended. I'd read all the final papers and gotten my grades in. The annual holiday play I was in was open and running on the weekends. Homework for the girls was done for the evening, and Kristen was out at an event at her school. It was just me and the kids, and I thought I'd make my special French toast for dinner, one of the few dishes I was capable of. They loved the idea. We battered up the eggs together, then I lit the stovetop. I dipped the bread slices and threw them on the frying pan. I felt like a beer and looked in the fridge. No beer. I didn't feel like running to the deli to buy some, so I figured, what the heck, I'd try one of those chews for the parents. Maybe I'd like it, I thought. Maybe that guy in Colorado knew what was best for me. The light stuff was helping my daughter, so why not give the heavy-duty chews in the back of the fridge a go for myself? Maybe this will be healthy, I thought. Maybe all the drug tests in college the NCAA mandated left me with an irrational fear of drugs. Maybe it was time to party. I unwrapped one. The first thing I noticed, it was slightly different color than the ones Anna was taking. I popped the thing in my mouth, chewed, and swallowed. For 20 minutes, as I fried the egg and milk-drenched slices of bread and served dinner, I felt only a slight tug at the top of my head. Nothing unpleasant, just some tightness. Anna and Nora ate on fold-up trays in the living room in front of the television. We had made a deal that if they finished their homework without complaining, which they did, they could watch a movie while they ate. I was washing the frying pan when it hit me. The slight tug turned into a whirling vertigo, pulling everything inside me to one direction. I started following that direction I was being pulled in until I realized I was walking in circles. I noticed then that the water was still running in the sink and some pieces of bread had clogged the drain, causing the water to run over the side and onto my feet. I turned the faucet off, and when I brought my eyes toward the floor, to see how much of a puddle I'd made. I felt like I was sliding down a steep slope. My stomach reeled. I felt like I would vomit. I hoped I would vomit, and started hobbling step by heavy step toward the stairs. I intended on making it to our upstairs bathroom, which required me passing behind the girls as they faced the television. Each step was like I was underwater. My feet and legs felt enormous, and by now, I was not only extremely nauseous and dizzy, but my head was throbbing. I let out a loud, aching sigh. "Oh my God," I said, getting to the stairs, placing one hand on the banister. "What?" Nora said. "Nothing, just tired." I got out, or something like that. I felt I was beyond vomiting and might just faint. Step by leaden step, I heaved myself up the stairs, pulling mightily on the banister. Somehow, I got to the bathroom mirror, and it took whatever strength I could muster just to hold my head up long enough to look at myself. I was green. I'd heard that you can be green, so sick that you actually turn green, but I'd never seen it. My skin had changed color completely, like a lizard. Everything hurt. I slowly turned the water on, moved my hands under it, and splashed it on my face. I again bellowed out some kind of pained noise. This time the girls came running. "Daddy," Anna said, "what's wrong?" "Daddy," Nora followed. They didn't sound like it was an emergency, but like they were intrigued. I tried to respond, but my upper half felt so heavy that I couldn't get enough air into my lungs to form words. I just sighed. "Are you sick?" Nora said. "What's the matter?" Anna said. The girls repeated their questions, which made my head hurt worse. "Are you sick, Dad? What's the matter? Are you sick? What's the matter? Dad, what's the matter?" Finally, I grabbed the sides of the sink for support, took a deep, hard breath, and shouted, "Your father is high on drugs! I'm dying!" I turned the faucet further for cold water. The girls just stared. Anna asked if she could call Kristen. I shook my head, no. The slight force of which nearly tossed me into the tub. Anna shrugged, turned, and headed back downstairs, leaving Nora in the threshold. "You shouldn't do drugs, Dad," she said. "This is what happens." "Yup," I muttered. "And drugs are illegal, Dad." Nora then turned and trotted down the stairs. Soon I heard the movie, which had been paused, resume. I stood there at the sink, hoping desperately that nobody would show up at the house and see me like this, or that I wouldn't just drop dead. At some point, it started to abate, and I made my way to my bed. About an hour later, I woke up feeling as if I had most of my faculties back. The television was still going downstairs. I looked at the clock on the dresser. It was now 11. "Girls," I called twice, my voice raspy. They both answered with a monotone, "What?" I sat up. I was still off, but the worst of it was over. I slid off the bed and made it back downstairs, moving slow, but pretending like nothing had ever happened. They were now into a second movie. "Girls, brush teeth. It's late. Anna, medicine time." They didn't move. I had to say it louder. "Girls, bedtime, brush, and move it." They got up. Nora turned the TV off, and Anna met me in the kitchen for the meds. It made me sick again to even look at her chews. "You still high?" she asked. "I wasn't high," I said. "Are you a drug addict?" Nora said from the living room. "No, and I was just kidding the whole time." "I knew it," Anna said. "High people feel happy. You looked unhappy." "I had a stomach ache," I said. "I think I ate a bag egg, and high people are not always happy. And where have you known high people?" "Oh, forget it." The headache was coming back. "Let's all just go to sleep," I said. But then I'd realized I made a great mistake eating the entire chew at once. They were meant to be cut up in fifths. They even had marks on the packaging like butter sticks. But never again, I swore to myself. As the girls headed for their rooms, I made my way to the fridge and threw the "For the Parents" baggie into the garbage. Cautionary tale.
Do not. And now for something completely different. I have a question from our online audience. This one comes all the way from Delaware.
Wow.
And the question is Anna's form of epilepsy genetic?
It is not genetic. No. She had every test possible, and it was explained to us that it was as random as a birthmark, this thing on her brain, you know. It was a lesion, just dead tissue in her brain. Just no explanation, just faulty wiring, faulty tissue. No.
All right.
there are genetic forms of epilepsy.
All right, so it's looking like we should start wrapping things up. So we have time for one more question from anyone sitting out here. I have a comment. That works too? Yeah, me too. Okay, we got 2 comments. I think we could handle 2.
From the 2 people that helped keep not only my daughter alive in front of PS 41 as crossing guards, but
there we go.
All those kids that ever went through those things. So.
So, Mark, I love you and your family, and you kept me very entertained all through COVID with all your stories and tales online, and the bird whisperer of Bayside, but Anna is a force to be reckoned with, and she always was. And I watched her this summer taking the soccer lessons to train to get on the team, and she was ferocious. There's anything she puts her heart to, she'll be successful at. And Nora is just a beautiful little ballerina. She's just trolling right along. But thank you for writing the book and letting us into your family and your life. It shows a lot of stuff that we didn't know. We knew something, but you really made yourself vulnerable and let us in and made us familiar. And thank you. Thank you. Congratulations on all your successes these last few weeks and months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everywhere I turn, you're in a newspaper or, something. Marc Palmieri.
Yes.
And now to the other side of
Peggy,
the room.
we love you so much. Thank you. Very kind. And it's been fun. We've been really lucky with it. Thank you. It's true.
Something I shouldn't do, cut right across the stage.
Well, could have gone by the nights.
I am the partner of Peggy as crossing guards at PS 41, and you did keep it under wraps. I don't know how you did, but you were a solid parent every day with these girls and not obeying me sometimes. So
Really?
No.
Wow.
Anyway, but I just wanted to say that really everything Peggy said is what was in my heart too. And thank you for writing the book, and I hope we see it as a movie.
Oh, thank you very much.
I think it would be a great movie.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great idea, too. Again, Alex Glass, Glass Literary, 212-24. Maria, again, what can I say? You're all part of this amazing community, and the school, PS 41, was great with Anna and is with its students. And I know you're over middle school now, so you got to see Nora and Anna a little more. But if I ever disobeyed you, I promise. I was distracted by something, and I'm so sorry. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Gosh. I got to hear. I must have been mortified if you yelled at me. Probably.
And I think we have reached a natural conclusion to the evening on that note. They are selling copies of Mark's book over in the corner over here. And I'm going to say it as Mark would. If you would like to lower the value of your book, he will be signing copies as well.
I'm one of those few authors that can do that. And that's by a wonderful a local indie bookstore in Kew Gardens that Stephanie came to find, and I knew about, and we knew about already. And so, of course, you'd be supporting a local bookstore, which is so important. So thank you so much for coming. That was so cool. Yeah. Love this place.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Kidding? Thanks, Diana.
I also want to thank the streaming audience before we sign off. I know Father Byrne has a word or two, but just want to thank anyone who tuned in online as well. Your presence is just as welcome and just as appreciated as anyone who is sitting currently in the room.
Just a quick, again, thank you to Mark. Teddy's going to tell me to walk over here. So
right there, in between us.
Just a couple more invitations for you. You'll see we've got Major Tom's Coffee House that Mark talked about, and hopefully he'll come and read this Saturday night. At our next Major Tom's Coffee House, it's number 50. We had no idea that this was going to take off the way it has, but it's a small outreach for musicians in Bayside and beyond. Our tagline for the Major Tom's Coffee House is a place to be heard. So you don't have to be a pro at all. Just somewhere to come and try out your musical chops or tell a joke or read a story or do a magic act or whatever it is that you do. But that's in this very room this coming Saturday night at 7 p.m.
There's incredible talent that shows up here, though. You should also know that. Like there's like people like me that are just playing around, but there's like serious virtuosic musicians that come here and play and sing, and it's a real treat. It's an amazing thing.
And I believe that finally we're going to be a coffee house again. We'll actually be serving coffee and such. So speaking of which, there's some coffee and some cookies in the back. Stella made her special cookies, so I'll let you find out what those are. Remember the questions she was asking.
Fifths.
Uh-oh.
Got him up.
And is Waiting for the Host available online at all?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So if you want to see All Saints at its finest, look for Mark's play Waiting for the Host from 2020. It was our vestry trying to do the Passion narrative in the early days of Zoom. Mark turned it from a disaster into, a Laurel and Hardy film. So
and it became my most successful. It was produced all over the world. I mean, it was like shocking. It was like a joke, and then it was just amazing.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, and you can buy the book.
You heard
can buy
it.
the book. It's there's a.
Thank you, and Mark, early on in the evening, we weren't clapping very much because those things it wasn't your reading, and it wasn't the story. It's just how do you clap for those parts? Yeah. So I told Mark as soon as I finished the book, I said to him, if I didn't know the outcome, I could never have finished it. But if you haven't read it, read it. If you haven't bought it, buy it.
Also, if you are looking online and you want to support a local bookstore and you would like to support this local bookstore that is here, they are Q and Willow Books. They are located in Kew Gardens. The address is 8163 Lefferts Boulevard. So if anyone would like to support the books that we have here, but you're currently online, Q and Willow Bookstore in Kew Gardens. And I think that about... I think that about wraps it up. Anyone here, like he just said, welcome to get refreshments, buy a copy of the book, get your book devalued. Everyone online, thank you so much for joining us for what we hope will be many of these authors' nights. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.